we're back. I'm Kevin.
I'm Caitlin.
I'm Dan.
And we're talking about articles from the cmuptm.blogspot.com. Here in this second section, the first article that we have is...
It's called A Hanging Garden That Floats Through Space to Meet Your Nose by Allison Walker from Gizmodo.com.
Alyssa Walker.
Alyssa Walker. What did I say?
Allison.
Allison. Oh no, I don't know how to read. I would say the title's a little misleading, but it's about this installation where by a Japanese artist where there are a ton of hanging orchids that raise and lower electronically to meet the people walking through this room full of these orchids, so that you don't have to stoop to smell the roses. You can smell them right there. It looks really beautiful. It's a room just full of flowers that you walk through.
Hanging flowers, and it's, you know, there's motion tracking, so as you move through the space, it detects where you are, and like the flowers raise and lower around you. It's by the collective of artists that created this art. It's called Team Lab, and I think that you sent me images of their work recently. The lily pad room they projected on. They do really insane, like immersive media environments that are also interactive. Yeah, it's beautiful. You should look at the pictures.
I mean, they talked about also how the garden is still growing despite being hung upside down because of the way that orchids grow through their rhizomes, which are their airborne roots, so that they can take in water and nutrients that way. I'm not sure practically exactly how that works.
You're not?
I'm practically, as a botanist, I can tell you how this works. But I did think that was really cool too, that they aren't dead, so it's not like,
it's not a room of dead flowers.
Right, yeah.
It will eventually be a room of dead flowers.
Yeah. But I think it makes it even more beautiful and kind of magical that these aren't. It's not like get there today because this is it.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's pretty cool.
Yeah, they were talking about how like this, because they're still growing and like the like bacteria and insects that are on them like are still like alive, that like the scent of the room changes throughout the day.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's beautiful. You should check out Dan, do you have anything to say before we move on? Just like
Yeah, it's dope.
Yeah.
I mean, also, I mean, if you remove the flowers, it's just tracking where you're on the room and raising and lowering things to in accordance with your body. So you could really hang anything from there, couldn't you?
yeah, I mean steaks.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, yeah, meat. Meat.
So similar.
Meat bro.
Steaks that fly through space to meet your mouth.
My dream. Okay, moving on. Our next article is titled "We Need More Crappy Plays" by Scott Walters on the Clyde Fitch Report. So this article, I knew it was one of those articles where like, let's create a clickbaity headline that is just an insane statement, and then actually talk about something completely different.
Right. And like something real, which I think was the annoying part about the title for me, was that it was like, oh, I think actually you are softening the impact of what this piece is about by saying, you know, or not even softening, you're making me not care kind of as much as I would normally.
Well, really,
because
he's not saying we need more crappy plays, he's saying we need more new plays.
Right, and that you shouldn't be so worried about needing masterpieces and you being playwrights, but also people producing them, so like larger theaters who have money to commission these works. Don't be so worried about having a piece that will stick and will be around forever and is an incredible work. It's like, just get the work done, because they're talking about that fertile soil, they use the word manure, will lead to having great masterworks at the end of the play. So just get those plays done, and we'll see if any of them stick, but don't worry about that. If you want theater to be relevant and reflective of our time and interesting to people. So I think that was a good point. It's like,
a good point.
You know, more plays, more new plays, don't get so focused on reproducing classics, only classics, like they do at the Guthrie, for example.
Yeah, and like let's have more plays that reflect, you know, more diverse people and backgrounds. You know, a lot of classics are about white men, upper middle class white people.
Which I love.
Oh, I mean, I love it. But I mean, I really disagree with this idea. He says, I'm pulling quote here. He says, "If we produce only classics, we are in no way reflecting our own age." And I think that's so untrue.
I agree. Yeah.
Because like classics are classics because in part because they can be adapted to speak they're about universal themes that can be adapted to speak to any time if they're done well. And I think if they are done well, then they can be like profoundly relevant and important.
Well, that's why we go to see them. So I agree that was like an insane statement.
Yeah.
But I also agree, and that was the thing with this article where it's like I feel sort of like he's trying to get your attention so much that he's sort of missing his own point, which is that and this is what a lot of theaters are doing now, successful ones, where they have a program that includes both classics and new works, and it's great. You know, it's like there's room for both, and I don't think even he would say like don't produce Shakespeare or don't produce. You know, it was bizarre. I would agree.
Yeah, and I think the point he meant to make, giving him the benefit of the doubt, was don't just produce classics, like unadapted classics, like set in their original time, no attempt to consider in the design or in the production like the relevance to the modern time.
Yeah. But these classics, I feel like
be trying something even if you're using old text.
But I feel like a lot of them. I mean, I totally know what you're saying, and I feel like they will be contemporary by virtue of being put on now. It's like me watching something from the 1800s. You know what I mean? It's like me reading something from the 1800s or watching a classic film or something. It's like, well, it's contemporary because I am a person living in 2015 watching it. You know what I mean? But I do know what you mean, where it's like I also want to see work that feels relevant to me. Put it on for a reason. Don't just put it on because it's famous or is supposed.
But I also don't even agree that there's anything intrinsically bad about putting on a period piece.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes those are. I mean, it's relevant because I'm here. I mean, you should have a reason why you're doing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Why I.
And
care.
if you're gonna do a period piece, do it. Do your research.
Yeah.
Don't. Just create an idea of what I don't know what am I'm struggling to think of an example.
Well, you can point to something I'm working on now, which is why you keep looking at me. I have a difficult project I'm working on where I feel like my voice is not being heard, and we just have an idea that makes no sense in a classic play, and
it's like a suburban mother's idea of what Tuscany is, right?
Yeah, basically. Don't take forever. It's fine. But basically, I think basically you're both right. You're trying to come up with a reason.
What was that quote again, though? I mean, did he say not to put on classics ever?
No. I think that's what's weird, though, is that all of it kind of gets lost in his hyperbole, but I don't think that's what he's saying.
Because I think, unless I'm conflating another article from the list with this one, I think he said somewhere in there something about how some theaters make an attempt to incorporate new plays, but it's a really shallow attempt where it'll just be one time in the season, and it's not really an integrated kind of.
Yeah.
It's not really trying to be progressive. It's just trying to get the young kids.
It's a token commitment to diversity. Here's a new play by a black playwright. Okay, bye. We're gonna go do Chekhov now.
Right. Yeah. They let that just happen.
Yeah.
That's
and I think it's that sort of that shallow, uncritical, unself-reflective kind of attempt to just survive and get the kids in the door without really trying to speak to them.
Right. Or believing that that's actually a valuable thing to do just in and of itself, separate from you surviving as an organization. It's no, this is valuable to create relevant work.
Well, that's actually a good segue, this thing about audience engagement and getting new blood in the theater. The next article is The Lies We Tell About Audience Engagement by Melissa Hillman in tcgcircle.com.
.org.
.org, sorry. So really she's asking what the hell do we mean when we say audience engagement, because it's not at all clear that we're talking about the same thing. Are we talking about theater that is engaged in that, or that is about issues that are relevant to the community in which it's happening? Is it engaged in the sense that, you know, the people producing and acting in the play are from that community, perhaps even non-actors? Is it, immersive theater experiences like Sleep No More? Like, what are we
Is
talking
it
about?
community outreach? What are we? And she points to the fact that it's basically code for getting young people and diverse audiences in the doors. So she's like, well, we all know what we're talking about, and it's not.
Can we just say it?
Can we just say, we're trying to make sure that our audiences don't all die, and that somebody's coming to plays in 20 years. That's pretty much her.
Pretty sure the last point that I made was actually from this article.
But they are really closely
Really?
related.
So minus 10 points to Scott Walters and plus 10 points to Melissa Hillman.
I think, these discussions are happening, similar discussions are happening for a reason. So it makes sense that you would, think they're from the same article.
But I mean, regarding this problem of like dwindling attendance in theaters, Melissa Hillman makes the point that when we're talking about like that dwindling attendance, we're really just talking about low budget theater, which is actually like for people who are working in the indie scene, massively highly budgeted theater, and that in the indie theater scene, there actually is a very young and vibrant and diverse community of people.
Mm-hmm.
So, do we have to bemoan the fact that, people don't want to see, like, as we were just talking about, like bad theater that's not relevant to the time that we're living in and doesn't engage with us in any important way about, like, the experiences that we go through day to day.
Well, she kind of makes it simple and suggests that the solution is to tell stories that are relevant, that people want to see, and she suggests looking to the indie model of ways to tell interesting stories that people want to see. Young, diverse communities want to see theater. It's just not the theater that you're making, person who's confused. It's like, well, and doesn't that seem obvious? Like, figure out if you have an audience base that you're hoping to attract, like, figure out where they are now and, like, see what or ask them, like, see what they're interested in. Like, I
think that, like, a lot of people don't even know that theater can be cool.
Yeah.
And they don't understand, like, the range of things that are happening.
Well, and that so many things, at least in my definition of it, fall under the theater umbrella. That, like, a great concert is theater. Mm-hmm. It's like so many things are theater. So
or it's contemporary performance.
Right.
It's like one of our professors, Caden Manson, has this network that he made called Contemporary Performance to kind of encompass all these different kinds of performance that sort of exist outside of people's idea of theater, but like there just needed to be a new term for it. So he was just like, well, here's a book that has all these performers in it, and this is what contemporary performance is. It's kind of defined by example. And I think that, people just aren't aware of that culture. It's kind of this this alternate, like, arts universe that, like, just mainstream people, like, don't know exists.
Yeah.
And I, until, like, semi-recently, didn't know.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know that there were people like Caden Manson and Big Art Group doing, like, crazy things with, like, live filmmaking and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you do sort of think that, like, there's film, which is relevant, and theater, which is for old people, and concerts, which are for young people, and then, like, that's it.
But
and weirdo art, and, like, that's it.
But even film feels increasingly relevant. Like,
Relevant?
Mainstream blockbuster films, it's just like, Jesus Christ, do we really have another Fast and Furious?
Yeah, I guess.
Another superhero movie?
I guess for me, it's like the fact that there's lots of kinds of film that are accessible through a computer that I have with me all the time. You know what I mean? So, like, when I say film, I guess I mean a big umbrella.
Yeah,
because like a film in like major distribution, it's like I don't care about this.
Yeah.
But that's just so accessible because I can just like I'm just like.
So the irony is that crap is so well attended.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
There's another side also, because I think the author makes an interesting point, which is that it's sort of the low-hanging fruit is the easy answer to say, oh, it's something about audience engagement. It's like, the internet. How do we use the internet?
Yes.
That's what the young kids are using. But it's like, that's the surface issue, and it kind of goes back to the article we were talking about before, The Myth of the Starving Artist, where it's a labor issue, and you know, you have big budget theaters who are trying to figure out how to get a diverse audience in the door, but they're not looking at their, you know, how do we get a diverse workforce?
Yeah.
And you know, how much diversity do we have like on our staff?
And there are organizations that do that, and I would argue that those are the ones that are probably going to last, because it's like there are some making a concerted effort, like Oregon Shakespeare Festival, which comes up all the time. I mean, they are continually looking at their programming and figuring out ways to tell more diverse stories, to hire a more diverse set of workers, and they have a program involving ASL where they don't only have interpreters at their performances, but they'll incorporate ASL into musicals as part of choreography, and they'll have deaf or sometimes blind actors working in it's like there are organizations trying. I mean, they also tell like non-Western stories. They've pulled in. They always have a script now. Over the past few years, they've started doing this where they'll tell a story that like an Indian author of an Indian story, or a Chinese, you know, and it's like that's so exciting to see, where you're just like, oh, this is work I want to see. Like, this is about something interesting that I haven't seen before. So I don't know. I mean, I think there are organizations trying, but it is funny that like it does seem like a lot of organizations are trying to like trick you into coming. You know what I mean? Like, if I just market this terrible thing the right way, I can trick you into showing up. It's like, no, just tell work that's interesting. Like, and that seemed like her broad point was like,
people can smell bullshit.
Cool. Yeah, your plays aren't that cool, so like, figure it out.
We have to move on. Sorry. We have to move on.
Okay, this is our policeman. Moving on.
Andrew's not here. Somebody has to
crack the whip.
So, thanks for joining us. We'll be back with a third section in just a minute. I'm Kevin.
I'm Caitlin.
I'm Dan.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh.